music. All right, Fambulem, welcome to another edition of the Then and Now program. Today is a very, very special one, and it's a huge one in many respects as I speak to Una, because the subject matter today is very special. And the thing we make even more so special is like the people that we get on board, which happen for we guess them, are very special people where you put together the years of experience where we are about to talk about, whether or not in the service of the public and etc., it amounts to over a century. And I mean, I'm saying we can do the calculation, and this is not dedicated people. So we are about to talk about the proposed government of Sierra Leone policy on the decentralization of local government. And the following question is, why now? We don't join. Okay, Dr. Barney Bernadette, the rejoin. Okay, those of you we don't join, and those of you where they watch now, we see the numbers they done, but we know say thousands of people and therefore watch this eventually. So we are really, really happy for get everybody on board. And as usual, we just ask everybody for share this. We ask everybody for share this because, like we always say on this platform, the issue of national conversation is so essential and critical to the well-being of the country has begun. It began a long time ago, but it still they go on now, and this is not the process. And again, just a reminder, a very, very special program on the proposed policy of decentralization. In a short while, I will introduce we guests, but Fambulem once again, today, the 6th of December, 2020, this is not the then and now, and we come to Una live from the United Kingdom. Before I introduce we guest them, I just want to give an overview again of the program. Not again, because I'm not really give an overview of the program where we get here tonight. Let's create a brief analysis from an historical perspective, which is local governments, and I think we don't they exist, from time immemorial, but it don't they evolve over time. So I don't want to go beyond, but shortly before the war, we know that there were issues with local government. And after the war, we know say everything collapsed around government. I remember myself as a boy, one thing we've been proud of is the decentralization of government, because government in itself cannot do everything. Okay, so then therefore decentralized government, in other words, apportion responsibility to the various authorities there, councils and districts and you name it. But then the war came and everything collapsed, and before the war there were issues. But then we begin to revive this entire issue after the war, which led us that when we go talk peace talk na Leone, part of the convention did address, when they talk about resolving the issue of what happened during the war, did talk about the decentralization of government. In other words, for empower other people. Because this is not part of the problem. Let's not mistaken, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not going to go through something where me not to an authority on and on before I miss the point, because I get people that will very much know exactly what this entire issue is about. So from 2004, we know say an act was born via the Leone Accord. So they talk about the devolvement of government, empower them from one end to the other. Okay, so I want fast track onto where we are now, that in 2020, despite all of these things that we don't happen for the last 20, 30 years in terms of devolving decentralization, which are kind of confusing in a way, but we'll get people in for address this shortly. The cabinet now, as we speak, has approved a government's policy on local decentralization. And they've made a couple of key recommendations to government. And this process, as I understand, and they move next to the Parliament of Sierra Leone. But before I go there, here is what we have today in terms of the kind of guests that we get. Today, Fambulem, we get Dr. Bernadette Lahai. I need not speak very much about this lady of eminence because she's well known now we domain, and they talk about Sierra Leoneans then. Because even beyond, she's equally well known. She's championed many things. She's served in parliament and hold the position of being one of the longest serving female MPs ever. She's held the position of a minority leader during the time the current the current party who is in power now were in opposition. She's spoken in many, many forums, and you name it, and belong to many organizations internationally. And this particular subject matter, as I understand them, when I look into it in profile, as something way close to your heart, and as something way you understand in detail. Equally so, we get Dr. Jonathan Sandy, a man of eminence, a man we understand equally so the subject we want to talk about today. He don't serve in many capacities in government. And we talked earlier on about these three people that we get. When you put the experience together, what it amount to is just exceptionally awesome. Dr. Sandy don't serve as a peacekeeping representative far abroad in the interest of the country. He equally don't serve on a government level, on a higher level inside our own country. This Leone peace accord they talk about, and I make I say, I don't want to go too much because this is not thing where the people that want they talk to, I must admit, they know this far more than I do. On the platform as well, we get Mr. Victor Ako Mengot, a very powerful individual who understand the rubrics of the law, USA is stand, waiting now the differences between the X and the Y's, the pros and the cons, the ifs and the buts. So between these three people, as I don't name them, una will see exactly where we are coming from today. The first question, or waiting I expect for understand to Fambulem, will go to Dr. Bernadette Lahai. Dr. Bernadette Lahai, if you receive we loud and clear, will you please tell Fambulem this decentralization process, it don't go through many stages, going back decades to USA we did now. What is it about decentralization? Will you please make we for let me understand the fundamentals of this decentralization, if you will, please?
Good evening to listeners, wherever you may find yourself. You know, government during or after independence was highly centralized. That means government took the sole responsibility to provide services for its citizens through the different ministries and sectors and departments and agencies. But everything was centralized at the seat of the government in terms of funding, procurement, doing the actual physical provision of basic social services for its citizens. But when you look at a country, you know, we are doing a policy of primate cities, wherein you have the city like Freetown, and then you also have the periphery, the rural areas, the districts, the chiefdoms. The physical distance between the central government that is always in the city is different, the physical distance is there. And there are a lot of intervening factors between the city and the rural areas. So that in the provision of those goods and services, there may be constraining factors that will lead to leakages, even the physical factors like the roads, the availability of inputs, the timing, the banking system, and everything, to the extent that it takes a longer time for these services to move from the central government, the city, right to the village where those services may be needed. So this is where the idea of decentralization came in. Can we have an intermediary structure that is closer to the people so that the services will be provided efficiently and effectively given the resources of that country? It's meant to also minimize a lot of the leakages that takes place because of the bureaucracy of the government. Central government is highly bureaucratic, a lot of paperwork, but down there, the people need those basic social. This is how the concept of decentralization came in. Can we bring the government to the doorstep of the citizens for which these services are meant? But also, can we ensure that these citizens for which these services are meant are also part and parcel of this service provision by including them in the identification of the services they need, the problems they have, by including them also in the solutions? That is why local councils from the ward level, they come up with their felt needs every ward, and then a locality will now synthesize all those needs, and given the resources they have, we now distribute the resources they have to solve those needs, but with people's participation. No, central government will no longer sit there and say, oh, my village Yumbuma needs this. The local government will now work with the people to identify their fairness. So that way, services are provided speedily, efficiently. All the leakages of time wasting, of bureaucracy and all those things are along the way eradicated, because now you have the government at the doorstep of the people. So all things being equal, you expect that services will now be provided rapidly, in a tumultuous manner, and in an efficient manner, so that there's value for money. Yeah. But you also build the capacity of the people. That is why, like, you have the World Development Committees made up of people within that locality. You also build their capacity. You build their analytical thinking. You also ensure that their own resources are also tapped into, because in the provision of those social services, yeah, you also want them to take ownership of the process. So in that process, you know, when there is ownership, there's willingness to also commit their own local resources. Like if you are building a road, stones, sand, and sticks, you know. So they feel belong, they feel own as owners of it, because it's not only government resources, but also their own resources. So you are also building their capacity, even for higher level intervention.
Okay, Dr. Bernadette. Many thanks for that. And Fambulem, equally want to express a special gratitude and thanks to Dr. Bernadette Lahai. I won't go into detail, you know, the extra we get for go, just for make sure say a keep to this program. This is deeply appreciated and will never be forgotten. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much. And what I take from there is about empowering people and the participation, you know, of people. I want to take this talk to Dr. Sandy. Dr. Sandy, if you can hear me loud and clear, sir, this is a process where you were very much part of, and you are very much part of that process now. But in the then, the way you were part of the process, I believe, is different from the now. Hence, if I understand it well, you've taken exception to what the process is now and USA Idigo. If this is the case, Dr. Sandy, do you give me a brief background about decentralization? Then, in a process where you participate, you help for shape the form that it is now. And where do you take exceptions?
Yes, thank you very much, Prince, for your invitation for engage this evening. And I also want to take this opportunity for say a very big thank you to you for make sure say I interact once more with not only my senior politician, but I'm a teacher as well. Madam Bernadette Lahiwi, you see, come from the same region, the same kind of district, but also to teach me from 6 nationalities. So I'm always proud that once that they interact with them, I always get.
So this not a semi kind of family sort of stuff, just for add some humor to the conversation.
Part of the problem waiting we can't be, we will talk about that in other occasion. But we get for respect to call social honor.
Yeah.
Then say when you sabi what's the end for it with people, that's when you go benefit. And so that's how I find the way not to the United Nations, because I've student people in their work assiduously with them, whether anti-Bernadette Lahai, late young Kaba, there were many of them. So I work with them, whether they were in parliament, whether they were part of ministers, or when I've been in the Office of National Security. But besides that, down the road where I left Office of National, the first international project, I get it now with UN at top, and then at the head of the governance of law. And the governance issue, where UN did provide support, they also, not to the World Bank, but UN also provide support together with other international groups following decentralization and local governance structures. I remember attending maybe Dr. Bernadette Lahai did a number of work at the agricultural sector in terms of decentralization with one of the staff, Tanzania College. So by then, Tanzania was anchored from UNDP as a decentralization program, especially for agriculture. Then I get now Tasimaja, the director of project now at the Ministry of Finance, was also one of the staff. He was seconded to the Ministry of Finance as a fiscal decentralization specialist. And therefore, when anybody wants to church with decentralization issue, because during that time the day before, the then SLPP government come out with agree for enacting Local Government Act 2004. Then we do a number of consultations, we get a number of researchers from UN, from this way we can look at the history, the origin and evolution of decentralization around not only Sierra Leone, but Ghana, Uganda, many other countries. In fact, I remember one time, this Dexter, Mr. Dr. Emmanuel Gaiman, when I was the first director of the decentralization sector, he said, when we get an discussion to go South-South exchange program for going to Uganda and many other countries that will understand how decentralization will work and which are the merits and the merits of linking the concept and practice of decentralization to local government structure. Because the other thing is appear that we see for the confused within a local government and within a decentralization. Because and
yeah, exactly.
And that is where I see they make mistakes. They were already tried for suggesting decentralization policy, where they mix up with local government structures. So the point that they try to make is it is sensitive in the sense during that time we all get a number of academics that we call a literature review, evidence-based literature review inside the decentralization process come out after independence, and which now is part of the structural or possible problems and why the then government will decide for an act where devolve some of the functions to of public services to the local council. Just like what Doc explained, in Sierra Leone currently, we get two types of decentralization. One, when you define decentralization from your academic background. Here, before the law, we get a number of discussions. Decentralization will take two types of approaches. One, in terms of public service delivery, one of the areas there where government is deliver public services and goods. Now, for provide safety and security and access to justice. So that one, you get most of the structures are also decentralized. Like Miami, during that way, enact the National Security and Intelligence Act 2002, now for decentralized the national security architecture structures. But that process, they call it deconcentration. That type of decentralization will deconcentrate the power where the commander-in-chief of the armed forces and chairman of the National Security Council and His Excellency the President, they deconcentrate the power to the local administrative organization, either to the police, the military, the regional provincial secretary, or the local president minister. That is the power within where the central government is decentralized. For that kind of decentralization, with National Security and Intelligence Act, we clearly call them deconcentration. This is how you get the DICEP, the District Security Committees, you get the Village Development Committee, the District Security Committee, they get the process provincial security committee. If I instructed on how they use for NACOVAT now, the NACOVAT is a similar structure. That is now we use for Ebola, and then we, decentralization simply now about structures, how the structures, institutions, and processes that they interact at the local. Okay. So in that circumstance, wait till they talk about now devolution, wherein not to access safety and security, not to access to justice, where the central government is responsible, because that are the police and the military and other sectors in the world. But when they talk about devolution within the context of the powers where in 1991 Constitution give the political parties and any government, it's clear that the things like agriculture, fisheries, health, education will be not decentralized so that the local government structures and institutions where Madam Dr. Bernadette Lai described, either at the ward level, constituency level, district level, through the mayor and office of the chairperson, district council, how they will provide direct oversight and accountability for that. No, not fully step. We don't read the theories around ways to make Sierra Leone get for come back to a party system. Because it is clear under one party rule or under just after independence, the local councils were characterized with nepotism, cronyism, and gross corruption. When in the other one party is decentralized, because that one will be more or less one party state, and that will be when they as non-participants. Okay. It was a source of state capture. It was a source of making sure that the cronies and the economic problems that they have from that. But let we not forget back, say, within them councils and the structures the way Dr. Bernadette described, we get different stakeholder analysis. We get state and non-state actors who then interact within the local council. Like I say, there are merits, just like way Dr. Bernadette Lai described the merits of why devolution, the relationship between central government and local government, very clear. The governance structure in terms of moving the state from public administration to public governance is say there separation of powers under multi-party democracy. You get the legislation, you get the judiciary, and then you get the executive. The executive branch of government are two strands. You get the central government, then you get the local government structure. Very clear in our constitution. So you cannot come and say the central government for exclude political parties within the local government structure. When
Dr. Sandy.
5.1 in the 1991 constitution, we say for political parties get three fundamental functions. One, political parties that are responsible to shape the political will of people and the people of Sierra Leone, whether through manifesto or through public policies we discuss. Number two, political parties that are contribute to programs of social and economic character. And then that section, they also say, give the power to political parties and say, now therefore sponsor and manage the candidate nomination process of presidential, parliamentary, and local government elections.
Okay, Doctor. Okay, Doctor.
Now that's now in frustration.
Yeah, I will come. We will come back to that definitely because obviously you and Doctor, the two doctors I will call, I will say, don't develop the case. We just don't set this conversation into motion. But I'll bring the third man come inside, and the reason why I get for come in, Dr. Sandy, now because you touch on something we get for do with the legitimate aspect of this conversation, which I want to take to Mr. Victor Mengot. Mr. Mengot, if you did hear me, sir. Yeah, waiting na the legitimacy of this entire exercise, in terms of the way we two previous speakers, they don't put on, because you've got the political side of things, but there is the legitimacy, the thing will legitimize all of these actions, which is the law. How does the law fit in all of these things we will talk about, if you will, please?
Well, I mean, I'll tell Dr. Sandy, thank you. It's somebody I've known. We work together in the international community, and he makes a very salient point. We have to distinguish, we therefore separate devolution from decentralization. And when we talk about the law, we go back to the time we'll get the Local Government Act 2004. And the basis for we'll get that Local Government Act 2004, as you mentioned earlier, now because of waiting, we go talk that peace talk na Lume. And the peace talk, they say, waiting to get problem in Kulala na country. Now, because people are not take part in the governance structure, so people are not able to participate, because when they talk about participation for no join, and that makes so get that. So when they look and they say, well, okay, if that's not the case, whether by omission or willful submission, we forget section now with Constitution, we deal with local government. Because the executive, then a local government, the judiciary, then a local, they even get chieftaincy reference in the Constitution. But there is no reference to local government per se within the Constitution. And when you take the legal side and law in a country, you get the primary law of a country, not the Constitution. All other law, na subsidiary legislation, which means and law and they relate to things that we do within the Constitution. So if we not get anything for do with local government, when they influence what most people in they do, then recommend say we for get a tie with Constitution. So if we look at this, then we say why now? Because that's the whole thing. Because if we don't get them from 2004 after the Local Government Act, then we don't get the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where recommend say we forget a section within the Constitution. So it has to be a constitutional issue. Secondly, when we talk about Constitution, we Constitution in 1991, and we don't get several attempts for review that Constitution. First, when the NPRC came, and interesting for note say, at that time, we present president now being part of NPRC. Yeah. And some of the people that were looking to that Constitution, like the late Dr. Ahmed Tijankaba, he himself become the next president. And I'm bringing this act for local government. So we talk about our Constitution, they make a recommendation where nobody no listen to. Next, the APC government come, President Kuruma come, he bring the Justice Kawan Commission. And Justice Kawan is somebody who I remember, I met him before he died, we discussed that. And we get a lot of issues that we didn't talk about local government within that Justice Kawan Commission of Inquiry. They have come to the conclusion, say, if we go into the Constitution, around section 72 of the Constitution, you get things therefore deal with chieftaincy. And if chieftaincy now part of local government, the other side where absent, now like municipal government, which is like city councils and the town councils, and the district councils, So you cannot get one part of that law structure in the Constitution where you not get the other part in the Constitution. And why we want them to in the Constitution? Because it comes back to the fundamental principles of the Constitution, where say power belongs to the people. Yeah. Power belongs to the people, and the sovereignty is guaranteed by the people. And the people, them, don't forget about the one in the municipality. People in a local government area, we get for deal with things and to deal with customary law under the chieftaincy relation. You get things for deal with municipal laws and township law. So that makes so we get for look at it in the constitutional process and say, well, look, if you want change and legitimize or make this term make people understand what in the happen, let's put it in the Constitution. And why would they put it in the Constitution? Now, for several reasons. One, how governments they provide services to the people. Because at local government, me not transport man by the background. Because transportation is a key problem for local government. Access to farm to market, access to local education, access to health facilities, access to other things there. And again, we look at what again it cause the problem. Now, how would they fund them different small entities of government, allocation of resources, you know? Bokucha, we don't see, even from central government, where one particular power, they go focus, okay, I mean, people learn this, they are for support. I'll make my own tongue better. That is a problem. Now make sure we say, well, we look at government with people participation, we can for distribute resources according to people they need. So they talk about social and economic development. Yeah? And that social economic development, what's in the Act say, every local government, okay, what's in called development plan. That development plan, they determine what in the people they need. And for do the development plan, you get for consult the people. And from that plan day, now you're able to decide how much you get for spend. And when that spending comes, you get a two-way. Either money from local governments or the power they way in a get as local government for raise local revenue. Remember,
so Mr. Mengot, we will come back to that, sir. And thank you so much for your articulation of this. But I want to take this same talk go to Dr. Bernadette Lahai. Because even the other politicians in the program don't say Dr. Bernadette Lahai is so much of a senior politician, and this thing what they talk, it come in two aspects. One, now the law, where I know say you very okron with, and Dr. Bernadette Lahai, who is an accomplished politician, if you like, and she knows all of this. So Dr. Lahai, I bring this come to you that, and in fact, you talk about earlier on, which is this entire exercise, it points to the empowering of people, developing the people of their mindset, developing capacity so that people will benefit from whatever is being given to them, devolving, and Dr. Sandy talked about this, the difference here between decentralization and the devolving of power. Waiting now this real problem now, 30 years on after all this talk, because in 2004 or beyond 2004, we talk about this decentralization problem. In 2010, there was a review, Justice Cowan and all way inside this, yet the part in document is still shelved for some reason where hopefully you will touch on. How can we go forward from Usai Wideso in terms of this difference between the power politic, and they talk about the people who are in power when they decide, and then we local government them. Dr. Bernadette Lahai, please.
Thank you very much. You see, I will take them from Usai the last commentator left.
Yeah.
You see, our constitution is the overarching law, and all other laws derive the foundation from the constitution.
Absolutely.
Yes, if you go to 35(1), Usai they talk about political parties and their functions. You say political parties therefore also support candidates for presidential, parliamentary, and local government elections. So that is very clear. The constitutional review where Mr. Mengo did talk about, is also very important because the 1991 Constitution and the 2004 Local Government Act. You see, there are a lot of things in the Act where not in the Constitution, but the Constitution 9 they give the directive for all of the other subsidiary laws. I sat on the local government task force in 2004. You know, Jonathan, then in UNDP, we been get Madam Sylvia Fletcher, and also we been get DFID. They were the two main international organizations where they fund the local government tax for go around the country and source the opinion of people. And we sat on that for months under the then minister Siddiq Ibrahim for come up with a local government act. And you see, all along, our elections have been partisan.
Yeah.
And the constitution, SSSF token that political parties will sponsor candidates. When we did a national consultation in 2004, it came out that the people wanted non-partisan local government elections. For the simple reason is that because it's local needs, you need people of local origin, same values, we know the problem, we also are being affected.
Okay. Okay, you seem, yeah, go on, Doctor, but okay, we seem for don't lost your audio. We seem for don't, we see your video and we see the action, but we seem for don't lost the audio. I don't know why. It might be because of reception. So while we try to get your audio, let I just switch on, here to Dr. Sandy. So again, Dr. Sandy, you see, you are critical to this entire everybody else.
By the problem, they are.
Yeah, okay, Doctor. We hear you, Dr. Lahad Bernadette. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, okay,
That's all right. Now the reception, we understand. Go ahead, please.
Yeah.
And the constraints they talk about.
Yeah. So the law, you want to know what happened when the draft, the bill was taken to Parliament. The partisan issue was in there, but it was thrown out by the parliamentarians. Then they said, no, you cannot do it without going back to the parent law when at the Constitution. So the Constitution is everything. So with the new policies we don't come on, how does it complement? How is it anchored on the Constitution? Our expectations are some of these things. We first of all deal with the Constitution. We have a draft Constitution. The final report by the late Justice Cowan. And in that report, there is a whole section on local governance. There's a whole section in that constitutional review on local governance. What it should and what it shouldn't be. I don't remember in that portion any talk of non-partisan elections. What it talk about is how do the relationship between the councils and the paramount chiefs, which has been a thorny issue, resources of the local government vis-a-vis devolved functions. It even go forward for say that we have affirmative action. That means we come up with special recommendations for increasing women's participation in the local councils by saying that no one gender in the local council should be more than 1/3. So that means you can never have men less than 1/3 or women 1/3. So these are some of the issues. So some of the new recommendations have implications for the Constitution. It's like you come up with the structures, with the policies, but the policies are not anchored, on the Constitution. So this is the issue we are now facing.
The policies are not
Like
anchored
if you
with
take
the
the
Constitution.
aspect of like the educational status of now the recommendations of the councillor and the mayor or the chairpersons. Now we are putting zeroing on educational qualification. But go back to the Constitution for the member of parliament. Even though the members of parliament are dealing with complex issues, national issues, international issues, and all those things, we have not categorically put an educational ceiling. We were very, very clear when we made the Local Government Act of 2004. Why we not talk about education?
Wow.
Because you are dealing with local services. You are dealing with people there, and we have large number of illiterates.
But Dr. Bernadette, if you allow me respectfully for interject.
Yes.
This is now a process where you've been a part of, and you raise quite a significant issue in terms of education, where it's part of with failings right now. And you raise this issue, say it wasn't mentioned then, but you were part of the process then. Don't you think you and others, here as when we go back to that 10 day, are kind of responsible, or we take a blame for what happened then?
No, we left it open.
Okay.
We left it open. Because even though we are silent on education, go to the councils today. You have people with first degrees. You have people with HTCs. You have people in the medical field in the councils. You have engineers in the council. We didn't want, by putting an educational ceiling, to disqualify would be good councillors. So we left it open. But again, you have to look at the subject matter that is being dealt with at the local level. Yeah, councillors are not full-time staff. They are not full-time. You have teachers that are councillors. You have nurses. You come for a month, you sit, you have your meetings, and you go about your. That is why they are given sitting allowances. They are not paid. They are not salaried. They are not pensionable. They don't get gratuity. Then when we did the 2004 Act. But that has not stopped educated people from going there. Just like in Parliament. In Parliament, we don't have any ceiling. We said your only educational qualification is you must be able to read and understand proficiently and take part in the discussions.
Okay.
But that has not stopped doctors, engineers, chartered accountants, and everybody from coming. So what I'm saying is the Constitution has not put a ceiling in terms of educational status. Why are we putting now a ceiling?
Exactly, Dr. Bernadette. That is a very profound question, and we will deal with that subsequently. I really like that. Yeah, because there's something we did on the table for that we talk about. That the Constitution not make provision for that. Where is this coming from? But like I said, we will come to that. So I want to move on, here to Dr. Sandy. We don't wait patiently. And Dr. Sandy, this is the question for you. It's plain and simple. Dr. Lahai talked a lot about issues. Again, una all na being actors. And in fact, I believe state actors, if I will call them, at the time. But here is the thing. On the issues where we talk about, local government, Dr. Sandy, is not mentioned nowhere in the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution, I've just been reminded by my good friend, Mr. Mengot, nowhere in the Constitution this is mentioned. And the issue here is the Constitution remains.
Can I come in?
Yeah, of course, sure, Dr. Bernadette. Go on, please.
34.1 mentions local government.
34.1 of the Constitution.
Yes, of the National Constitution.
Yes.
It says, subject to the provision of this section, political parties may be established to participate in shaping the political will of the people. to disseminate information on political ideas and social and economic programs of a national character, and to sponsor candidates for presidential, parliamentary, and local government elections.
Wow, Dr. Bernadette. Yeah, okay, Dr. Bernadette, many thanks for that. Again, now the issue will be 1.2, but I get a little bit, you're like upside down because it does mention it. But now, what is being proposed look a little bit different and political. Luckily, we get political people and the legal people on this platform. So I'll go back again to Dr. Sandy, and thanks to Dr. Bernadette Lahai. Dr. Sandy, here is the thing, sir. It is in the Constitution. Local government is mentioned. I thought otherwise, but it is indeed mentioned. But again, I keep the repeat that you were there when all of this were coming together. Something must have awfully gone wrong or it's not going right, because from publications who they see in media, you are upset, you are irked, you are infuriated with something. Can you make that something known about this process which definitely they infuriate you, something where you really don't like? I hope I capture this right. And if I do, if you can explain to the general public, sir, why?
Prince, thank you so much again. But let me also thank Dr. Bernadette Lahai and Brother Victor. I think they make very salient points, and especially on the floor. I remember one of the things where I want to remind you, we always refer to you as being the technocrat in this. But now I don't transition from the politician.
Okay, I will take note of that, sir. Thanks.
National chairman and leader of the party, and I was one of the presidential candidates. And for the values that we have in Team Africa represent is that anything we go for the Supreme Rule of Law, that the job of the politician to protect our interests. The reason why, as the previous speakers have said, it could be a source of divisiveness, it could be a source of violence, it could be a source of tension among the people. So we, the political elites, our elites in general, therefore be very careful. They are how they do consulting. They are how they don't go analyze this. So they do formulate policies here and there. You compare Ghana to the context. It's very different. And therefore, if you're angry, we will get evidence-based approach, and also we are academic, we are policy, we are politicians. And therefore, many of you, like me, teacher Anna, very hard. Some people are not grateful that you be grateful. Therefore, recognize people and give them the due. And that is very clear that we don't know the root causes of the war. Like Victor did say, and Yusuf mentioned the TRC. We, the National Unity and Reconciliation Party, we clearly see the vision of the former SLPP government, where they did it, Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The recommendations are there, so many of them. We have not been able to implement all, but efforts have been made by previous parliaments, this parliament, and others. May we not reverse yourself for both years. Second point I want to stress on the rule of law. Sierra Leone treaty and signatory. Sierra Leone gets a treaty and signatory to many treaties and protocols. One of the main treaty or protocol where the international best practice on the African continent, where Sierra Leone self narrow. I'm sure Dr. Bernadette Lahai, we don't have now South Africa, they represent the African Union Parliament. He could tell you saying that the African Charter on Democracy, Election and Governance. Under Article 3.1 of that African Charter on Democracy, Election and Governance, it says all member states continue to promote political pluralism. When they say political pluralism, also means even your opposition political party. You don't look at it as any. When it comes to policy debates, in dialogue and participation, like where the previous speakers have mentioned, how do we nurture political participation, inclusiveness, and dialogue? Those principles are fundamental in the African Charter on Democracy, Election, and Governance. If Sierra Leone don't go sign up to that, And then based on National Constitution, then the Political Public Election Act, and then if you go to the Local Government Act in 2004, which was enacted by our parliament, Section 60, 61, 62, or the Public Election Act, is very clear the role of political parties and local government structure. So the legal framework, we are not operating, arguing in the legal gap. The supreme rule of law, the continental law, the international best practices. So I just want to make that clear. But some of the points that we raise now is clearly that this sole policy, national decentralization policy, cabinet don't go approve. They are not saying it. Just now, I don't just watch AYP just now. The PRO for APC, the civil society behavior, then we get the deputy minister and PRO for the ruling party. Everybody, the consultant was there. Everybody's asking, where is the decentralization? Papa, who will not say it to you? So what they say is, how can we develop a public policy in a vacuum, in darkness, behind the shades? And one of the issues we raise, which we argue, they will say, government say we get state of emergency now for 1 year. So inside this 1 year, lockdowns were there, people are not able to travel, social distancing, COVID-19 restriction, precautionary measures. So who stand this consultation complete now? Then they can't go to So the context itself, the timing and the policy, the legal implication, and then the international best practice. Above all, I think the points that were Dr. Barrett live and therefore take a serious and other speakers. I mean, not to theoretical, I don't want blocks to be good at the best school in England when they study decentralization policy. But one of the case studies they only at now London, Singapore, and so on. How do they use devolution, decentralization to manage diversity, ethnic diversity? How do they manage, like now in your country, as you know, not today, wait for the Sancom, the start work council, or where we see child still all kinds of in terms of revenue. But one of the signs they always see, we potentially go into instability and conflict. The trigger points there, now this political tribalism, ethnic identity politics will be fashioned, such that we need to recognize it. If you see for C, they do well with the corrupt people in terms of representative democracy. Now, in terms of the local council, the ward level, and now the mayor of Peru Town, the manager, and the overseer, that they get that one in terms of local government structures. Let's give it to them. If we see Cambia this year to get 6 constituencies, NGC get 4, then they're members of parliament, then the local council, then the last ward level, they go beat all man the back. Give it to them. The ability when the executive, the central government is in power. If you have Mayor Akisoya as the mayor of Freetown, now APC get her, or you get the chairman, Western Rural District, then serve the whole TV, we know what's happening at the time. Politics of representation through political party or independent candidate. The ability for the executive branch of government to manage what I call diversity, all man, so that whether the relationship between the central government and local government, that is for the focus. How do we improve and manage diversity? So when people then see themselves, Mina Liba, Mina Timi, Mina Loko, Mina Mide, Mina Shabo, and being represented either in the local councils and being represented through the political party and their ideology, they are taking the ability to say, no, no, kill them. Lastly, their local government structures and they, we believe saying for best practices there. Now, one of the structures in the way political parties, they would say, then small one, and now when they come up, when they carry out this or any side, if they want to win 1 or 2 more, they get representation. That part of the platform in landing, when the political parties they become relevant in terms of promoting their new ideology and policies based on their manifesto, where they don't put it. Because public, as you see, that section 35 one day inside the 1991 constitution, where Dr. Bernadette lied, the lead back for the first mandate of political party that was shape the political will of people through their structures, institutions. So you come to public policy, you come to manifesto, you come to the political ideology That is part of political education. So let's not kill this idea of multi-party democracy as envisaged by our African leaders and as well as our forefathers, whether from independence and all the lessons in it, and then Musa will do. Thank again, Prince. And I think the conversation will continue, but I clearly say within the framework of the rule of law, and then but the question still at the ask is where is the decentralization policy we are discussing? I have nobody has seen that.
Many thanks, Doctor. Many thanks, Dr. Sandy. Of course, there seems to be a kind of confusion, and it's the confusion most times, you know, that people can dwell in, and other people that we understand can use them confusion points in for kind of divide. So the issue now is decentralization and devolving, but when I don't set the record a lot straight. I want to go back to Brother Mengot. The Constitution, obviously, not the supreme law or legislation of the land. All other legislation, of course, we get many, and that also involved the 2004 Act, are just subsidiary of, if you will like. So what would I hear from Dr. Bernadette Lahai and Dr. Jonathan Sandy is this sort of confusion where they happen in between the people and government, and somewhere in the middle, what is going on. So in terms of the law, Mr. Mengot, outside the people they, in other words, what the people need for understand for take this process forward. You just hear Dr. Sandy Gigis now. There is this plenty of confusion, and people they suddenly use that confusion for continue for confuse the people kind of further, because part of this process now for empower political party them, empower people them, so that they will get their own say inside a kind of democratic process. This now the process involved. But in talking about the law, how can the law be strengthened so that the people also can understand waiting in inside in terms of the law for move this process forward?
Well, when we talk about the law, we go back to the Constitution and the reference points. Now, the Cowan Commission, the Constitutional Review process.
Yeah.
A lot of, it was so many people take part. And it is interesting when you look at the Cowan Review process, even some of the, one thing I would say, the SLPP from that report, and even it was the National Democratic Alliance, the SLPP, and the PDP recommended that the Constitution should have an entrenched clause on local council elections. Let's clarify what I say in order. It is mentioned, but there is no entrenched clause or a chapter where deal with everything that we did at the subsidiary act. So it's like picking we no get mama. That is the problem. And why this they happen is because the tension between the center and the people. And then say when two elephants fight and the grass will be underneath the suffer. So the Ministry of Local Government, depending, they get the strength for either strengthening local government or weakening them. And when they talk about poor performance, when you talk about poor performance, you have to talk about mismanagement. If we remember, go back to history under the Stevens era, there was a time when this thing started, where instead of this election of local government, when it deteriorates, the government began to appoint chairman them of even Freetown. At one time, I think the late Akibobet was chairman of city council. He was not a mayor, as we get now when I elected mayor. So that then you get political interference from all sides. Then you get the over control by the Ministry of Local Government, because each of them people and they're responsible. And look what unique thing will happen there when you talk for the law. You get the administrative arm of local government, then I talk about municipal council or district council, and you get the political arm. Under the administrative arm, the chief administrator is an employee of the Ministry of Local Government. And I know like the man way responsible for make things happen. Whereas the mayor and in deputy, they are representing political parties. So you have this tension. Then with the other thing, how would they shape the money, right? And during me and Dr. Sandy, we both work in Kenya, and we've been in Kenya at a very critical time, you know. And when Kenya been getting now 2 weeks war then gets, or we said draw, we get tenure, and the first thing we Kenya do, now for go back to the constitution and review. When they review the constitution, I make sure they come up with county government, where each county get your assembly, they get your governor, they make your law, and then they allocate money to the counties and they, based on the population size and the needs of the council. So this money for shape, Salon is small. In fact, I worked in one province in Kenya, which is the Northeast province. From Garissa to Mandera, it's 1,000 kilometers. That's one province in Kenya. There's no way north, south, or east, west in Sierra Leone you get any distance in 500 kilometers. So the lack of, then the other thing we see recently, the 2004 Act, you get a Schedule 1, which show all the powers the central government for handover to local government. And some of them powers and they now go help them for let them raise local revenue for develop their community based on the requirements of the people. So if government still hold on to some of them powers and they, it means the council depend on government. And they say, who pays the piper calls the tune. Now the man they beat the drum, and they determine who they dance. So that's the problem. And typical example, the recent what happened in Africa, I talk because I'm a citizen and a voter in Africa, we see the tension between the Minister of Local Government and the mayor. They can't to it. The main argument was, again, that same formula where in use, and we don't use an above. But then the government say the timing. Now you know right. And then another thing there in that particular thing, in the way it go against waiting constitution say, because when you take law, don't start with the talk about the law. You get the primary legislation, which is the constitution. You get the subsidiary legislation, when I like the local government act. Then under that act there, it get delegated powers to minister. And the minister in delegated powers, all he need for do, now for do consultation and gazette them. You don't need for go parliament back for let parliament approval.
So this is about parliamentary procedure, Mr. Mengot, I guess. Yes. That's what you're, okay.
Yeah, that's the law. Because right. Each minister gets a delegated legislation. The same like our council, local government get rights to make bylaws. And when they make them bylaws, then get for refer to the local government minister. If the manner, if you not approve, I go send them back to them. Let them refine them. But if you approve them, then go lay them before parliament and gazette them, let it become law. So that is the problem when it comes to, then the key thing where even you get a World Bank report on 2014, we talk about decentralization. And one of the things where they're homing on, now the human resources, not to just the word council, the people, the way they work within the council, and technical capacity for help. Because take, for instance, now, one of the central part of the role of the local government, now for make development plan. Again, the same process, if you take as I explained, development plan and local government therefore relate to the national development plan. So they not get for go outside. And when they make that development plan, the chief administrator, he's the head because he is a technocrat. Then he also get power for bringing technicians and come inside for deal with the technical side. But then now when it comes to how they draft the law, but in making that development plan, you therefore consult the wider sections of society.
Mark, come in there again. The question is directed to you, Mr. Mengot. Sorry for again the interjection. But yeah. You mentioned something about the 2004 Act, you know, and I mean, one possibly foresee whether you're able to address a particular section or sections of that Act, if you can do that quickly, which is part 5, we talk about the functions of local councils, you know, and councillors, because from the understanding, there seems to be some kind of contradiction where they go on, and anytime with contradictions then they on, the political tension they rise, and that in itself, the essence, the way all these talks we don't go about from during the war, after the war, what we aim for achieve, is then thrown into the dustbin. So the Local Government Act, for example, talk about the highest political authority in the locality will be the local government. Is that the case? And tell us a little bit more about what this law embody, please.
Well, if you say the highest political authority is the local council, but same law, if you take the act, there's a section in the act which say you get an interministerial committee to deal with decentralization, which is headed by the vice president, you know, and other ministers like the Attorney General, Minister of Agriculture, and all those people. They're there. But council within the powers, they come with that, beside that authority there, now the powers will then give for make bylaws. If we remember, let's take them back to history in transport. You remember, say, in city council, when we grow up, city council been a dog license.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that as a boy because I
as a boy because you know go get dog, you know get license. You know get license. You get a collar.
Yeah.
Same way. Before we get Okada and Keke, push bike and a two-wheel bicycle.
Yeah.
The Bokuna tongue. Now city council been the license.
Yes, you get a round thing at the back, so wheel. Yeah.
So city council you get powers them.
Like
so that is where the executive powers come in. And the high political power in making laws like bylaws. Right? If you take one thing now, like street trading, city council get rights for make law where they deal with, now make sure they deal with their market people. So then they make their own law, government they make their own law. When I make sure talk about the relationship, in making the law, it gets to be consistent with existing primary, which is the Constitution, and subsidiary law, which is any other law.
So primarily is the Constitution and any other subsidiary law. Yeah, absolutely.
And then subsidiary law, apart from that, if you look at the devolved power, city council get to do with water and sanitation, and you go get other law that will cover that.
Which means the city council is very, very powerful, especially within the city limit to say in powers. And that will create a kind of conflict between them and government, vis-a-vis government and them. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Mengot. And just for the purpose of time, just want to rush through a couple of things quickly. No one keep on for too long. I want to go to Dr. Bernadette Lahai. But before I do so, I just want to let Fambule know, say we are broadcasting from the then and now. And we thought anniversary they come, and that will be celebrated virtually. Last year was a different thing altogether. We managed to put a diverse, view of people in one hall. But that's another thing altogether. But the third anniversary they come, and it will be celebrated on the 19th. And we will be talking about social media, which will be the key topic. Today's program, I want to make Fambule for understand, is sponsored by Mingles Bar and Restaurant. Mingles Bar and Restaurant now a franchise, a growing franchise in the United Kingdom. We don't already get two spots which are doing quite well. One now Peckham Park Road. So if you live in London, you want wine and dine in a very cozy and friendly atmosphere, consider Mingles. The latest franchise has just been opened in Brixton, 205 Brixton Main High Street. So they are the main sponsors of tonight's program. So Abiwale wanna know. Alongside again, this program, we get Dr. Bernadette Lahai. I need not talk about the name any longer when you mention the name. You also get Dr. Jonathan Sandi, who happens to be the leader of an opposition party, the NURRP. And then you get Mr. Victor Mengot, who just speak just now. So let's go straight to Dr. Bernadette Lahai, and thank you again for the patience. Before I left you and go to Mr. Mengot, there were a couple of things we've been mentioned, and one thing we come to mind is the candidates where they vie for position as ward councillors. waiting the law say and waiting government they try for bring calm on board. It sounds very, very contradictory because the law itself, and waiting person they think is a different thing. But cabinet don't approve of them proposal there in terms of this decentralization process where government bring before cabinet. Now the next stage is in the go parliament. But here is the thing, Dr. Lahai. Candidates who are vying for positions as ward councillors, then they say for stand as independent and not a member of a political party. I don't know how this is going to happen because recently on a national platform in Freetown, I think SLBC or how you call them, AYTV, the Minister of Local Government, none other but the Minister of Local Government himself was there, and the moderator being smart enough to ask the minister, how will you determine, somebody will not belong to a political party as opposed to somebody who belongs to a political party in terms of the context? I want you to throw light on this because you've been talk about earlier on. MPs and paramount chiefs should be non-voting council members, and even though the president and MPs, where they make all their rules there, they are not held to that degree. They say they can forget degree or some kind of qualification was kept upwards, but yet people the way supposedly they serve below them supposed for getting qualification there. Dear doctor, because it sounds very much political, I make I throw this to you. Will you please shed light on this?
Thank you very much. The Local Government Act is very clear on how elections they take place. You have to be a candidate. You either stand under a political party or you stand as an independent candidate. It's very clear. It is written in black and white, very clear. Yeah. Now that make, over the years, we have had both political party candidates and also independent candidates. And it also go down for give other qualifications. Apart from either you are a party candidate or you are an independent candidate, you have to be ordinarily resident. That means when you pass stay now that locality, that ward, now there you normally they stay and live and work. It's very important. And you have to be an elector. That means you are a registered voter in the ward that you seek to contest. Unlike again parliament, yeah. We see say some members and then one constituency, but they live in one constituency, but they are members of parliament in another constituency. Why this delimitation? Because it limits you, say you for be resident in that ward, you for be ordinarily resident in the ward. In fact, your taxes, you also have to show that you are a taxpayer in that ward because it is local. It's local, your contribution, you are part of the community, you experience the same problems as that community, and you are part of the solution. You hold maybe largely the same values of that community and so forth. So you see, it makes them very clear, but you have to stand under a political party or you stand as independent. That means not under any political party. So this is very clear, simple and clear. So for now, for let us see, now you have a law that has gone to parliament, that has been working since 2004. Yeah. And now we don't do all this consultation. It don't go to parliament. It don't go to cabinet. And now they say, now instead of a political party candidates, you are all independent candidates, yeah. But then the National Constitution, 35(1) says, political parties sponsor candidates for presidential, for parliamentary, and for local government. So how are we going to reconcile the two?
Exactly. Please tell us.
So they will have to, because they say some laws, they have delegated functions. But for me, these are far-reaching. It's not just a stop at that policy level, which cabinet has approved. It has to go beyond that to the cabinet, to the parliament, because you are now seeking something that the parliament has made into law. And only parliament would change that one. It's there, it has been passed, it's gone through all the crucibles, of lawmaking. So you have to come back to parliament to seek another mandate. If at all it goes through, then you can go through that. So that is the issue. How do you, under the non-partisan, how would you differentiate between a party candidate and a non-party candidate?
So, Dr. Lahai, just before you deal with that, I therefore ask you this without putting you on the spot, but you're a smart politician, and I just want to hear how you go answer this in terms of what you say earlier. So the issue is taken to parliament. We've seen many things happen, and generally the way how the government of the day, when they want things done, how these things, can get done, because, they are family in control. So eventually, when this is taken to parliament, you have been a parliamentarian, very experienced parliamentarian, been there for years. What do you think this outcome will be eventually?
No, I am not in parliament anymore. So I'm not going to predict what is going to happen there. I'm not there. I don't sit there. But you know the configuration of parliament.
Absolutely.
You already know also, since 2018, what has transpired in parliament. We started with APC having more members of parliament than SFPP, even though SFPP made the government. Over the months, you are preview to all what has happened, to the extent that now they are almost at par. Yeah. And then we also have other two political parties. We have the NGC and we have the C4C. We have 3 independent candidates. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Politics is about negotiation. It's about give and take.
Compromises.
It's about negotiation. With that type of parliament, yeah, you expect that the government will lobby other political parties. That is why the issue, Jonathan was talking about diversity. Yeah, in parliament there is diversity. Yeah, and no one political party has absolute majority. Yeah. So that means you have to talk, talk, behind the scenes, along the corridors, and so forth and so on. So I'm not going to be able to predict, but every issue that comes to parliament is different, and it elicits different positions from the different political parties. Some are controversial, some are not controversial, some are sensitive, some are not sensitive. You look at the national interest, what is at stake. So I wouldn't prejudge what will happen. But for now, what is happening is that there are conversations now around these policies. And it is this conversation, because the populace has to be given a chance, to also discuss and debate, and give their own point of view, because this is what national consensus should be built on.
Yeah.
National consensus means giving people also the chance to also give their own views, based on their own experiences, group experiences, individual experiences, and so forth. So that at the end of the day, there's a national consensus. So for me, there should be a national debate, which is already now happening all over the social media, in the radio, in the TVs, and in the print media, and so forth and so on. This is how a country builds up its democracy, open up the space so that everybody, has the opportunity to give their own views. At the end of the day, majority carries the vote. That is what democracy is. But at least everybody has been given the opportunity to give their views,
Yes, Madam.
Please,
Dr.
please just permit me to make one point when it comes to parliamentary procedure.
Absolutely, come in, please. That's the idea of
now we don't
the
talk.
program.
We don't get the policy documents now, yeah? It depends on how it is presented to Parliament. If it's presented as an amendment to the 204 Act, then you're talking about simple majority. But if it's something that changes an entrenched clause in this Constitution, This does, as Bernadette Lai, Dr. Bernadette Lai mentioned, in terms of political party representation. The Constitution under Section 173 says that any changes to the fundamental part of the Constitution should be by a 2/3 majority.
2/3 majority, yeah. Yeah. So that is where that is where the negotiation and the interparty dialogue and everything is happening. Nobody has a 2/3 majority. Yeah. Nobody has nobody
They're
has
not going to get a 2/3. That's it.
52% majority. No.
Yeah, and these are experienced people talking, and I think say Dr. Sandiwan coming quickly. Yes, Dr. Sandy, please do.
Yes, the thing is, for example, I think this is time we are going to start testing our democratic institutions. Like Dr. Bernadette lies, we have come this far. We are moving towards how do we consolidate our democracy for the economic prosperity of our people. For us, I will speak as a politician now. It is clear that anything that we judge on certain provisions in the 1991 Constitution will not only be for the attention of Parliament, we will go to the Supreme Court to interpret that provision. So the role of the judiciary will come in. This is the supreme rule of law, which is above all organs of democratic institutions. So the only institution that we can resort to, how we can go to court and ensure that the Supreme Court interprets that section. We say 35.1.
35.1.
Yes. And then, now I'm just giving you a high. So it's not something that people agree. It's going to be about negotiations, we know the paramountship representing that. We play their own game already. This is what they want. We know even from when local government reform secretariat was established, when by then the Minister of Presidential Affairs, Muhammadu Buhari, was there. It was a struggle. The British government did not want chieftaincy arrangement again, but they brought it again. And that relationship, we always know it's going to be a tension between the local government structures and especially the relationship between councillors, mayors of the city, and the paramounships. We know that, and the central government. But as I did say, it is an issue of Supreme Court interpretation. Number two, because this is important, maybe this is the time, once we start going down, we start testing our democratic system. It will be appropriate to take the legacy of late Dr. Peter Tucker and then Justice Coward, that's the 1991 Constitution, so that we can review and go into referendum once and for all. Because as you did say, there are a number of institutions which were established based by Act of Parliament, but also on the basis of the Leone Peace Agreement. How do we fast track the implementation of the Leone Peace Agreement? For example, the ONS, the Office of National Security, there's nowhere in our national constitution. However, when you go to Section 165, it empowers the military and the police. They are the only ones mentioned in our national constitution, which gives, in fact, it's so ambitious that it gives power to the military to say they safeguard our constitution. And we, in the principle of democratic governance of security sector institutions, we think that was too much. So there are a number of vacancies. Then, as Victor did mention, and Dr. Bernadette, all those provisions after the analysis from Justice Coward, certain clauses of how do we do decentralization and local government, clear pillars, are all to go into the 1991 constitutional review. And then once I know that the referendum bill was drafted in 2015 for us to go into that. But we have been forestalling to all of this. But as I see, at some point, when these things happen, we also need to test the judiciary. We also need to see what role could be cut off the Supreme Court in terms of interpretation of the Constitution. Unless maybe this could be the time that our democracy will advance. But I'm sure we will not get there. And first, as I say, this policy itself is yet in the package. No one is seeing it. It's only the public document, and political parties are responsible for shaping the political will of the people. Where is the decentralization policy that touches on local government? That political parties have mandate to manage and sponsor their candidate nomination process. It's something Number two, the issue of why political parties matter in local government, because it's clear that the administration, people think the administration and management of candidate nomination process is an easy task. It is not. From lessons learned, experiences on how do you vet the vetting of the candidates that apply for symbol. It's really about allocation of symbol. It's a complex process that you need, like Dr. Baranai was referred to, you need to have a local tax receipt, you need to be resident, you know. They are very well defined in the Local Government Act. And I also like the point she made, why they did not decide, they decided not to have education limit. That's the principle of exclusivity. You are excluding illiterate people. And I can tell you that the village headman in my father's home is the most powerful person I fear on earth. I don't want to call him his name on air, but traditionally, from social order, the village headman, where my grandmother comes from, my great-grandfather comes from, is so important, but he doesn't speak English. But yet, he can arbitrate, access to justice in terms of alternative dispute resolution, he can deal with that. So let's don't exclude people based on our level of education. Let's go. The other thing that is important I hear in that act is that the establishment of regional coordinating structure, administrative structure. They say it is proposing that the policy say there will be regional coordinating office. So that will usurp the powers of in terms of democratic oversight by the councillors, by the elected local government officials. That's the power. They are supposed to be providing transparency and accountability and oversight of procurement policies and that. Then above all, the recommendation that to be paying local councillors to put them on the wage bill, my God's sake. We are coming out of COVID-19, a global health crisis. Our budget constraint, we are enlarging the public financial management, we are continuing the minimum wage bill. Why can't we free up some money for good roads, for schools, for education, for agriculture, rather than
okay, Dr. Sandy, I will prevail on you for hold your thought right there, because it seems like that's a conclusion, and I get space for the conclusion. We rapidly gone out of time, so let's take this quickly to Mr. Mengot. Mr. Mengot, there is a body of work, a legitimate work lying, gathering dust on some kind of a shelf or cupboard. And that's the work of late Justice Cowan, who spoke extensively to these things the way they talk about. Okay, he addressed all of the issues there. My direct question to you in this instance is like, why is it, first of all, the current president, who you mentioned correctly, was part of this entire process when he served, in the military under a coup d'etat, and then subsequently became the head of state. He understands these processes very well because he was there. He was part and parcel of it. The late Ahmed Tijan Kabame, his soul rest in peace, was also a part and parcel of this process we really talk about, and this process therefore go on. When do we draw a line on this particular process? That's my question, where I want to ask to you. And the president did make, this is not the final one, the president did make a commitment, a campaign commitment, a promise that he will review this constitution of Justice Cowan. Do you think he will? And if he will, if he doesn't, why? Mr. Mengot, are you there? Okay, I think we don't lost Mr. Mengot.
I'm mute. I was on mute. Okay,
yeah, but did you get
even during Justice Cowan,
okay,
the Commission of Inquiry, apart from the wide consultation we then do within Sierra Leone, they also went out of the country. And one country we then go, na Kenya. It was a matter of expediency. And now look at that way, because there are so many things apart from local government acts, right? Where we don't develop, well, for change the constitution. And even if you look at this, the present constitution, why important now is because some of these things where they talk about, whether they talk about excluding people, the political parties from standing, or even if you take the issue about you forget WASC and degree for local government, but not for central government, it goes back to, let's look at section 26 of the Constitution. It says, no person shall be hindered in employment of his freedom of assembly, association, or freely associate other persons to form or belong to a political party. So that is in the Constitution. So if you want to say you want to change that, you go actually bordering on constitutional amendment. The second part on the Constitution, section 3A, it says every citizen without discrimination on any grounds whatsoever shall have the opportunity for seeking adequate means of livelihood, as well as adequate opportunities to serve suitable employment. So if you take that section of the Constitution, if you say somebody now, if I forget was care for be ward councillor, don't you think, according to the Constitution, you're discriminating another person who not was care? So with these issues just like this, it means it is now prudent for us to revisit Justice Cowan. I remember I was talking to him, I went to his funeral, his review, because we get, and how would that be done? We get a legislative committee in Parliament. Yeah? So let's take that back to him, to the committee.
Yeah, but Mr. Mengot, I get what you say, but I just want to revert back to what Dr. Bernadette Lahai say. You know, in terms of parliamentary, you know, kind of functions and the kind of parliament where we get now, without she going into detail, I think we all do understand. So this is what we hope for, and this is what's supposed to happen. Go back to the Justice Cowan, you know, report and have a review of her, as the president promised. Yeah. But will he? That was my question to him. I mean to you, sir. Will he?
Well, it's like what you will say until a Christmas time with the council. It's like talk is good. Okay. You understand? Because in that Justice Cowan review, one of the key things which came out is the power of the executive. Yeah? The entrenched power of the executive for use things like the overuse of executive orders and those sort of things.
Hence me question to you whether he will, because if you enjoy that kind of executive power where you use for impose a state of emergency, when you impose, you can put a blanket ban on the declaration of assets, you know, here of funds, the way they come in, or the auditing report, then will you want to actually bring that into being something we go curtail your powers? That's my question, Mr. Mengot. Without playing.
Okay, I'll give you another analogy on that question, why it wouldn't happen.
Thank you.
And I'll refer to Kenya, where we've been go study. Where they said we get the same problem before the CISA, it was important for review and constitution. Because let's take public appointments now. When you get your appointment letter, it says it pleases the president to appoint Mr. X, Y, and Z in key positions, right? And why president get the executive power? Because like we kind of power, so you get the people that will sponsor you, you get the people when are your friends, people that were out, right? And coming to power, it's like people that plot me. Let's sponsor this man, kind of power, he go get for give me such a position. So if you want to review the constitution, some of those executive powers of the president, get for go. Just like what in Kenya do. Kenya can say, where you appoint your chief justice, it get for be open competition. You advertise them. I remember I did it when they appointed the chief justice. The job was advertised. In fact, the interview was on television. Let's take the present situation now. Ministry of Mines, we've had 3 appointments of minister. Let's take the key lawmaker, the Attorney General and Chief Justice, right? Yeah. This is the second one we have. So, not president, even
Third
the
one,
previous
the third
president,
one.
let us not base it.
Victor, the third one.
Even the, yeah,
I said the third one. Sorry for interrupting you. Charles Magai, then
yeah.
Priscilla, then we'll get third one now.
And this is the third one. Even the previous president, let's go to the previous president so we get a balanced view. You understand? After we don't spend a lot of money on this constitutional review with Cowan and everything, millions from donors and everything, right? And I will tell you the analogy, the funny part of it. When the report went to Parliament, now the very APC members, they vote against Cowan's recommendation. SFPP at that time in the opposition,
of course,
right? They were in favor.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And this is the topsy-turvy situation where we find ourselves. And not just for the benefit of time, Mr. Mengos, I will get for stop you there. I want to go quickly to Dr. Bernadette Lahai and then come to a final submission of all the participants into tonight's wonderful, wonderful program. Dr. Bernadette Lahai, this is just a quick one. Part of your submission here tonight, you have been careful do with the act of the 2004 Act. You talk in a both political and a legal fashion as a politician and as a legal mind. But above all, what we take from now somebody we understand the subject matter. So we talk about rules and procedures of Parliament and the Constitution and local development plans and how all of these, they work. And one thing I want to bring back again to Fambulem, we listen to you, is you make one very, very critical point where like the ward councillors, they now where they want for let them get degrees and etc. Not to full-time employees. How then go able for balance this kind requirement when they ask of them now, when they're not a full-time employees, probably not they on, of course, they don't want to give them salary. That's why they're asking them, forget this thing. But it seemed like a political intervention, Dr. Lahai. In other words, how do you see this particular thing? Will I be right if I say it looked like a political intervention without you saying it exactly as it is? And just before I cede the platform to you again, in terms of the question what I just asked, I'll be one further ask this in terms of ministerial responsibility for the delegation of duties will fall under Section 26 of the 2004 Act, when that's something where you understand very well. And the reason why I ask this again is because they took this same matter and go to the minister them. The minister, they're not approved already. Now, the parliament, it go to. Dear Dr. Lahai, will you touch on these issues, please, before we come to a final submission?
The issue of the qualification, you say if now a political something.
Yes.
You see, they work very hard for get quality education at this country. But let's not forget that for now, we have high level of literacy. But at the same time, we want to ensure that there is inclusive democracy. Then one day now, not of people then way they will go sit down at class 1 again. Majority of them, where they in the rural areas, they not get the opportunity again, the age and the responsibility. In not give them that time, they for let them go sit down again for go take WAS or go secondary school. And yet, they don't already go to your school. Nature, the responsibilities that they have had, the leadership positions they have had, when they man say, old person, not to God, but ain't God don't take for pass. That means the experience, they have the experience from the way where they don't handle leadership and all of those things. But as we also they say, there are some people then where they in the rural area where they're capable for sit down inside the local government without they not get it. But you also have technical qualification, yeah. Somebody get HND, HND, somebody get OND, somebody get diploma, yeah. So we get all these variations of qualification. But if you dey peg am to was,
Yeah.
then na a problem. Or you peg am to first degree, you know, from a recognized university. What about somebody where he don't go through all the stages of accountancy? He don't do CCA, CCB, or all them things. But but you say not to a degree. So if we are going to look for a degree, you know, we have to look for a wide range. The equivalent, some things are equivalent to degrees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some qualifications are even more, they are than past degree, you know. But you know they call them degree because they are specialized professional requirements. Yeah. So that is what I can say. But what they say, let us make sure that our laws conform with the Constitution. Yeah. The laws like they conform with Constitution. If the Constitution not call for degrees for MPs, the council, why make we be say that? We have the CA. The CA is a professional. And most CAs now they have first degree masters. They have been in the profession for long. They know the administration. So let them do the work for the local councils. Okay. Let them do the work for the councillor. The councillor way maybe na from 5 he don't stop, you know, or the mayor where maybe he get HTC, he get HND, he get maybe CCAC and all those things, but not a degree, but sometimes even higher than a degree. You understand? Okay. Then the second question where you talk, where you ask, you will just repeat the second question.
The second question being based on the act itself, and there was something around that way Abiwale you touch on. We get something for do with ministerial responsibility and the delegation of duties, because now the same minister them we form cabinet, we will call cabinet. Now then take the case to and then approve of this case. So I mean, just want to let you weigh in as an experienced, you know, you're a political person. We don't serve now all their capacity, then we understand the internal workings of all of this and this particular subject matter. So ministerial responsibility and delegation of duties.
Certain issues, then even if cabinet approve, it does not become law until it goes to parliament. So sometimes the issue is because it has happened many times, cabinet approve something without even the parliamentarians knowing, waiting, don't happen, the processes and everything. But then at the end of the day, you know, the buck stops with the parliamentarians for now approve. So sometimes you find out that the parliamentarians can also be in a quagmire. They can find themselves in a dilemma, you know. Something cabinet don't approve may or may not be in the interest of the country, or may not be properly understood, you know, the processes and everything. But when it goes to parliament, you know, parliament may not even be also given the time laxity, you know, for go back, because this type of thing, if these decentralization policies come to parliament, I'm sure parliamentarians have not been part of the consultation at all. If they pass anything where we're not there in the interest of the community, the parliamentarians are going to be lashed. And parliamentarians they just pass things normal, then they can't consult through. This is one issue. If it goes to parliament, they have to give the parliamentarians time to go in their constituencies and consult. They come and put a report together of what is coming out of that consultation.
Okay, Dr. Lahai, thank you very much for that. I will go to Dr. Sandy and ask one final question, and I will give each of the participants here tonight a final submission. It depends on how, we get a cap of 4 minutes. If you want to end them under 4 minutes, that's fine. But it's been a brilliant run, and the audience are spellbound because nobody called. There are not many comments, which indicative of people are really listening to what we are saying, and I want to say thank you. And do let me continue for sharing. Don't say thousands of people and get for watch this later. Dr. Sandy, just a quick one to you, sir. Here is the case. I mean, everybody don't make the case on this point. The government, they say, the government position here, they say, nah, sanity now in one bring come to the entire process. This changes the way we talk about this evolving of this decentralization devolving. We don't confuse we in terms of the terminology. Some of us don't know which is which, within a devolve, within a decentralization, vis-a-vis the other way around. And I think so you try to spell that out. But also with this, so now, Dr. Sandy, you divide opinion a little bit, I must tell you this, because there was an article that came out in which you said the process now being, pursued, it go possibly open the gate for any Jack and Harry, if you like, no insult or disrespect to the other people then, for now become, for occupy them position they are. In other words, if I happen for win a lottery ticket today, because I get small money, I can also come and declare myself, say, I want to be this and that. So I want to let you take your time now and address this on this public platform, so people can go get a clarity within exactly you mean, and waiting you think, say, get for happen potentially, for let we avoid the situation where we seem for the go towards.
Thank you again, Prince. The point is the need for reflect on waiting the structure, size, and composition of government institutions. Dr. Bernadette Lai mentioned, and many people you said on mentioned, say in each of them local councils, there will be about 20 now. Then we will not get only the politicians, whether not local council or mayor or chairman. We get a lot of technical assistance. And besides the state or public servants, whether the chief administrator or remember, say most of the other functions, health, education, fisheries, roads, they don't involve them to them. So each of them sector, in terms of sectorial analysis, each ministry gets their own person within the council. We second, more or less, we get seconded officers for promote the council work for development, for implement the development plans. So now Dr. Bright, let me NDC the chairman, particularly I mentioned, say people that go to and then come.
Yeah.
But the main point is that a devolved structure, there are two types of actors, the principal and the agent. In decentralization theory, not to lecture on the day, you say for public policy, you get principal agent theory. At the principal and the competition, then the agent, now the civil servant, civil society, NGOs, and then you will get multiple agents, but you must get one principal. So at the local government level, the principal, now the councillors, the mayors, the way they represent them in terms of democratic oversight, just like when you can get the central government parliament, everything. So we now fulfill that opportunity. In other words, as I say, the paramount challenge is that who that will manage the candidate nomination process for their local council? At the moment, political parties get one. For independent candidates, it's like confused or they are out of disgrace. Then when you get people themselves, you get 3 people that want to nominate you. You're not just a grab people to make. So for chieftaincy, we know say right now we're telling you that you be chief to get support. They all inside the book for vote nominate or manage that process before the election is set. And to the Ministry of Local Government. So definitely the independence, we will compromise the independence of candidate nomination process where we go left now back right now. We don't know if you pull on at the hand of the political parties, who is going to manage that candidate nomination process?
So Dr. Sandy, I want you hold your thoughts right there, sir. You will be giving the final submission and you can take them from where you just ended. But we don't run out of time. So now go to Mr. Mengot. Mr. Mengot, this is now your final submission. I'm not even going to ask you a question any longer. you know the subject matter, you've delivered brilliantly, and the audience are hung on to everything with you talk, sir. So in conclusion to this brilliant conversation that we've had, three brilliant minds, you can't have it better than we do tonight. How will you conclude this program? What's your final submission, please? Your microphone mute, by the way, you need for unmute them.
My final submission is to look at, even when we talk about the relationship between central and local government, being somebody who has been, unfortunately, the only time I served in a salon government now in a technical capacity as an air traffic controller. But in the UK, I've served both in local governments and in parliament, both the House of Commons and the House of Lords.
Wow.
Unlike UK, we don't get constitution, we get a constitution. And some of this issue we are talking about, now constitutional matter. It is for this reason that when I say, because we parliamentarians, they need support, they need technical help in designing this, and I make sure I set up the Sierra Leone Parliamentary Watch on Facebook.
With over 40,000 members.
Over 40,000 going to 50,000.
Yeah, going to 50.
But one fundamental thing we're going to our constitution, it says no law shall make provision which is discriminatory either of itself or in its effect. That is section 27 of our constitution. And that is what this proposal is bringing forward. Finally, Justice Cowan, I had the privilege of having a long debate with him. He's a man of immense stature. He served in several capacities, the Supreme Court judge, High Court judge. I think the government and we Sierra Leoneans owe it to him, his legacy. For now, we revisit their recommendation and we touch on everything we've been caused kuskas in our country and see how we can do them and let the government give we a 60-year back the present. Because next year, Sierra Leone 60.
You get 60
and if we look
on the clock, sir.
Yeah. And so you get 2 years for giving that present. You get time. And if you look at
God willing.
Yeah, you get time. And if you put that constitution, that our report there, we discuss them back, and then we can use it as an opportunity during the next election in 2023 or vote on a referendum alongside the election so that we start fresh. That is what I'm praying for, and that is what I'll be campaigning for. And that is my wish. And that was a promise I made to Justice Cowan that I would continue to be an advocate of what he has done so that we can address all these problems that Sierra Leone are of constitutional nature.
Indeed.
And this is an opportunity for us to start.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Mr. Mengot. What a closing submission to the legacy of a very powerful man. You know, your deeds shall live after you. Now go to Dr. Sister Bernadette Lahai. And just before I yield the floor to you, I really want to say thank you so much. Fambule Nogo Sister Dr. Bernadette Lahai, they on holiday. I call them holiday, far away from the city center. And she made it possible just for appear. We don't keep her for 2 hours. I mean, I can't say thank you more, Dr. Lahai. This is your first time on the platform, and I hope this not will be your last, because you make one key statement that the conversation, which I believe in so much, has begun, and the platform is set, and we need for the talk. And una the powerful voices need for the send them messages and they out, and we they create the in-house for let we have this conversation. So Dr. Bernadette, I'm not going to ask any further question, but I just yield the floor to you for let you conclude on this brilliant conversation where we don't get tonight, where we go meet with brothers and sisters, both domestically and internationally.
Well, Victor, I want for Prince, I want to give you, I want to say thanks for giving me this platform. It's been very difficult because, as I say, my village are not been able for really get the continuous internet for let make this conversation. So I've been just get for can run from my village 1 hour to Kenema just so that I go there by night start this conversation.
My God, you got my heart. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
What I go say is that we get a lot of opportunities, you know. We don't pass, we maybe we squandered, we not able to take advantage of, especially coming from our war. For us, one of the most important opportunities where the late President Ahmed Tinubu bin Giwi now for reinstate the local councils, where you know from 1972, where they abolition for almost how many years. And coming from war, you know, with a lot of reasons why we had the war, one of the ways that will be for rectify some of those issues, you know, was this decentralization, local council, devolved functions and everything. Because that might be an opportunity coming from where everybody fresh, you know, and we for don't take advantage. We not address everything inside the local government act as we supposed for address them because we still have certain things that we're conflicting. But the opportunity way being arise to was the revision of the national constitution from Peter Tucker in his own time, then to the late Justice Cowan. For me, you know, if we've been just go ahead and do the referendum and get a new constitution, a lot of the things that now they talk for don't be addressed. Because I say, in one of the chapters, then devote and wholly and solely on local governance. And if we don't look at that chapter there and see the things that we know inside the constitution, we'll put on there. Some of the entrenched clauses that we're supposed for now give we the teach, you know, for move ahead with this, or now we don't miss. But we'll not still miss. The time still there. But me feel say, you know, the urgent issue now is our constitution. Huh? From 1991, we have fought the war. We had an interregnum. We have done several elections. We don't get the Ebola. We don't get now the COVID. We don't get a mudslide and all those things. A lot of things don't happen also internationally, where Sierra Leone are a part of. And we get with African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Good Governance, where Sierra Leone has signed and ratified, and all these things. We are part of the African Union, and the world is becoming globalized. We get the peer review mechanism where Sierra Leone is a part of, in fact, you know, all those things. So these are all opportunities where maybe for fee say, you know, if we don't help we for quickly after the 2018 elections, for let we do a constitutional review, let we get with new constitution because it addresses a lot of things. So for me, you know, that's not a great opportunity where time is of the essence, because if we go by we election timetable, we don't do election in 2018, in 2023, we should be doing the election. If local government are 4 years, then that means 2022, we for done they prepare for the local government election. But for me, you know, a lot of things have happened. This constitution served us in 1991, but all the things we don't happen, you know, they serve with the way we expect for serve with because of all of those things. So let's review our constitution. Let's have a new constitution. And then, you know, all other laws will be reviewed so that we have a progressive constitution. So really, we don't score first in a lot of things. We had our war, we finished it, we did our DDR program, and we are always coming out of calamities or natural disasters, you know. Yes. And even after the war, we are considered the safest country, really, you know, despite everything, you know, with the travel nets and all those things. So for me, let us do our constitutional review. Let's have a new constitution. But let us not forget, say, the constitution is the overarching. Whatever we do, let's ask ourselves, is this in line with the national constitution? Are we in any way in conflict with the law? So it's very important. This is a conversation we don't start. This local government is very important because it's covering almost everybody, you know. That is where our people live and work. They need all these basic social services. But for that, we'll make her efficient and effective, you know. We have to put the right structures. We have to give it the teeth. But most important, the democratization is about bringing people, building the capacities and so forth. The question is, this new dispensation that we want to bring in, the non-partisan, is it enough to build our capacity? Is it enough to deepen our democracy? Is it enough to give voices, to people in the rural areas? These are some of the questions we really need to ask. I thank Una very much for the opportunity.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Please,
wow.
I'm available anytime you want me on this platform. I thank
Absolutely, Dr. Lahai. Wow. What a high. This process we pursue, is it in line for strengthening with people? Will it attain the aim for which we set out this constitution? Everything what they do, does it bother around the constitution? Did you hear that? It's historical but profound. That's what the doctor end. And I love the high, because this is going to go for ages and will be remembered. And you just put Dr. Sandy, in a difficult position, because now you get a final wrap up. But I sure say he's a man, you're not shy of words, and he's equally capable. But Dr. Lahai, I want to say thank you very much, very, very much. And the way you end the program, those profound questions that you ask are reverberating now, and we go on for reverberate for a long, long time to come, because they are actually profound. How do we benefit from the Constitution? All these actions where governments they take, will it empower the people? Okay, Dr. Sandy, we don't run out of time, but you still get more time, here for close this program. Sister Bernadette, if you want for retreat now, you can, because you've done extremely well. So, Dr. Sandy, the platform is all yours, sir.
Yes, thank you again, and let me be sister not wait my honorable. We therefore say good night. That's the name.
Absolutely.
But I get three. I want to conclude with three reflections. Waiting, I'm therefore may you reflect on. One, going from waiting Victor said and waiting Dr. Bernadette said. One, there are legal implications if we continue with this policy. With this decentralization policy. We get a number of legal implications. I mentioned the 1991 Constitution, how that the Supreme Rule of Law, and it will get implications for legal policy. And as I said, it's not only a parliamentary issue, but it also gets issues how the Supreme Court or the judiciary can decide for interpreting certain courts if we decide to go for it. Number two implication, the timing. I think the policy will come at a time when it will characterize with, it will raise unnecessary tension, unnecessarily political and electoral tension. We just come on now a meeting 2-3 weeks ago when the National Electoral Commission already go doing all the political parties with international community. Don't be out, don't lay out an So, in other words,
Dr. Bernadette, you need to mute your mic. Your private conversation, they come through. So mute your mic, please. Yeah, go on, Dr. Sandy.
So, as I say, one, we get legal implications. We are not bother much with Victor and Dr. Bernadette, the constitutional implications. And then how that aligns itself with the political implication, the timing. Because as I said, 3 or 4 weeks ago, the National Electoral Commission clearly put out the electoral calendar. So 16 months from now, in other words, 16 months from now, the local council elections will come. So the question they ask me, how is this policy, decentralization policy, with their recommendation for exclude political parties from managed candidate nomination process will be aligned with the ongoing electoral law? Because right now, as I tell you, the NEC also don't commission a consultant where they look at the Public Election Act 2012. So in terms of alignment of the provisions of how the Public Election Act will be in place 2012, will that not be a source of political and electoral tension? Because, we don't involve into election. Now, 2 phases of the electoral, I can tell you, it's all the time. the normative phase versus the operational phase. So the normative phase that they would do, so we begin to tamper with the laws, the decentralization policy, aligning the influence, automatically the influence, the process for draft a new Public Election Act, we will replace 2012. We will look at, with now 16 months from now, we'll get elections because most political parties are now busy with rehabilitation their political offices, then they manage them, and they cry for more convention. Now they have them primaries. So the next stage is now for manage, identify candidates there, and then begin manage that nomination process. So the timing with this policy will it not undermine political stability and create unnecessary tension among the country as we don't suffer from COVID-19. So the last point I want to make is about public financial management. I've been trying to talk about that things. When you look, although they're not exposed to decentralization policy today, but they say Boku, they will get for create job for people. The great Dr. Bernadette Lahai describer. Most of the local councils, councillors, they know they receive paid. Now sitting paid at the paid. We just come under COVID-19. We be under economic austerity. How will they can continue for increase the minimum and the wage bill they pay goal? That's something we will consider. So we know that we say government will recommend at this point, or they will get a large public sector, even though don't come up from COVID-19. So we feel say government for consider say the policy for right size and the body. Then lastly, managing diversity. How sensitive Victor mentioned that in clause 3.1 something that the 1991 constitution wants to not discriminate against people, whether by race, by tribe, or by education. We all for one for greater political space for every scaling and get equal opportunity. So we will make sure say this kind of policy will not lead to a situation where it will bring political pluralism and it will increase ethnic identity and tribal politics rather, or if we're able for how we manage ourselves as a people and diversity. So for me, the general conclusion is that may we leave the policy or the local government act again for the time being. And from all the speakers, then we to understand that the priorities when officials will not let small. Now, follow us, push Justice Cowan to constitutional review process, the referendum process. But I think that's a little bit so we will start with that process. But also, why I say for leave the local government act like we do. No user the structures we do now because we did a phase approach of the COVID-19. More or less, Leone which is a phase on recovery, post-COVID-19 recovery. How we're able to accelerate the service delivery through the existing structures the way they made the local council the way they made, so that we'll be able to build the resilience of local communities and through their world development plan. So post-COVID-19 resilient building in terms of increasing food security, other production assets there. I think say we know we'll get time for the ways to type our conversation where we'll need for decentralization policy or can enact a new act of parliament. How would that support post-COVID-19, post-recovery and sustainable development? So in that view, I think in terms of sequencing and prioritization, I will conclude saying, let we leave the laws that are current in, then we use the existing structures, institutions, and processes, including the decentralization policy, and we use them for complete and consolidate against the order through the COVID-19 for beats COVID-19 once and for all. Then we make sure that we link to sustainable development rather than introducing the divisive policy. We would already see, we are already tense, we are already quite divisive. So I would just want to complete that. Thank you once more. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Dr. Bernadette Lahai. Thank you, Prince. And as I say, this is a conversation we'll continue with, but let me not make sure that we create unnecessary political and election tension before 2022. The election not the
2023, okay, before 2022.
No, 2022 is local government. Now 16 months.
Yeah, local government.
Yeah,
local
government election and central government election in our parliamentary and presidential. Local government are 4 years. Let's leave it as it's there. The capital is out. If we see the need to do decentralization policy, they go involve that means they go have for influence the reform of the Public Election Act, and that they will do unnecessary political.
Okay. again, many thanks. I'm so excited myself. You're moderating this program among heavyweights, Dr. Jonathan Sandi, Mr. Victor Mengot, and Dr. Bernadette Lahai. I mean, put the experience of these people together, like I said, at some point in the program, and you know what we're talking about, especially the subject matter. If you want to hear about the subject matter more, these are the people that you need for talk to. And it's been quite an experience for myself, speaking to these people and articulating the issues that matters most. And some people, especially Dr. Bernadette, make a commitment publicly, say, when you need me next, please make it known. And the extreme to which Mrs. Lahai went to, just for make sure, say, this program happened, like she appear on a area in village, day on holiday, get for one back na Kenema, just for make sure, say, it happened. And some of the commentary are not be able to read, but one way I pick up is, somebody said that this woman, she's really a patriot. Apparently, they think I'm from another source, but from what he said today, yeah, but just follow her. And I suppose, say, finally, Dr. Lahai, you sound, because I mean, they watch your profile, like some how do you call it, a Pan-Africanist. If you are brilliant, that's all I wanted to say. Dr. Sandi, many thanks, sir. And I'll get you on the program back soon, because you have so much to say. Mr. Mengot, the same thing. For Putuna all three, even though we want this diversity and objectivity, it's kind of a little bit of difficult, because the subject matter is so congested that for uncongest them or unpack them, as they're making and will say, you need the brains of Dr. Sandi alone for a program. So I say thank you to Una again once more, and we've come to the end of this program, and Una good night to everybody. Dr. Sandi, Dr. Bernadette Lahai, Mr. Victor Mengot. I will left Una with this religious tune for the Sunday morning. Thank you much, and bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah, Joe, I'll see you soon.
Yes, definitely, sir. We'll talk soon. We get a program there before you travel. Thank you so much. I appreciate Una. I appreciate Dr. Sandi. I appreciate Dr. Lahai. This has been a good run, yeah. Thanks for informing these Leonean people. Dr. Sandi, now that's how we go talk in camera.
Okay.
Thank you very much for tuning in. This is the final end of the program. Good night. Okay, let's close this program.